Jiwoo pressed her face against the observation window and stared at the creatures below. They were huge. Some had 6 legs and scales that shimmered like metal. Others had wings that crackled with blue lightning. One beast was so big, it could crush a car with 1 foot. These were the Vrotics, the legendary battle companions that every species in the galaxy treasured. She was 8 years old and lived on Nexus Station with her parents. Her father, Tae-sung, was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Her mother, Hana, was a scientist who studied alien animals. Jiwoo loved watching the Vrotics train in the great arena. She dreamed of having a companion like that someday. But humans didn't have Vrotics. When Earth joined the galactic community 3 years ago, everyone noticed that humans arrived alone. No battle beasts, no breeding programs, no ancient traditions of bonding with powerful creatures. The other species found this strange and a little sad. Some found it funny. Commander Gorthak was one of those who laughed. He was a Kelthran warrior, tall and covered in thick armor plates. His Vrotix was named Rokmar, a thunder lizard that weighed as much as 3 elephants. Gorthak ran the arena and training grounds. He made sure everyone knew that humans were weak. That morning, during a diplomatic meeting, Gorthak challenged Ambassador Tae-sung. He spoke in a loud voice that everyone could hear. He said there would be a proving ceremony in 1 month. Every species would bring their warriors and their Vrotix to demonstrate their strength. It was tradition, it was honor, and humanity should participate. Tae-sung knew it was a trap. Humans had no Vrotix to bring. If he declined, everyone would think humans were cowards. If he accepted, everyone would watch humans fail. He stood there, silent, trying to find words that wouldn't shame his entire species. Jiwoo didn't know about any of this yet. She was in her mother's laboratory, looking at Earth animals that had been brought to the station for study. There were fish in tanks, birds in cages, and small mammals in special habitats. Most aliens thought Earth animals were cute but useless. Too small, too weak. Not like the mighty Vrotix. In the corner of the lab, there was a reinforced cage. Inside was a creature that looked like a small badger with gray and black fur. The label on the cage said it was a honey badger from Earth. This was the 8th containment unit it had been placed in. It had escaped from all the others. Hana warned her daughter not to get too close. The honey badger was dangerous. It had bitten 3 scientists and destroyed 2 pieces of expensive equipment. The creature was small, only about 30 pounds, but it was incredibly aggressive. The research team wanted to send it back to Earth. That night, the honey badger escaped again. Security teams searched everywhere. They found claw marks on metal doors. They found torn air vents. They found evidence that the creature had walked right past alarm systems without triggering them. But they couldn't find the honey badger itself. Jiwoo couldn't sleep. Her father had come home looking worried. She heard her parents talking in low voices about the ceremony and the challenge. She didn't understand all of it, but she knew her father was upset. So she did what she always did when she couldn't sleep. She went to the garden dome. The garden dome was a huge space filled with plants from different worlds. It was quiet at night. Jiwoo liked to walk among the strange trees and flowers. She found a bench and sat down, eating rice cakes she had brought from dinner. That's when she heard something moving in the bushes. She should have been scared. She should have run. But Jiwoo was curious. She held out a piece of rice cake and waited. The honey badger emerged from the plants. Its fur was dirty. Its eyes were sharp and intelligent. It looked at Jiwoo, then at the food in her hand. Slowly, carefully, it approached. Jiwoo held very still. The creature sniffed the rice cake, then took it gently from her fingers. It sat down and ate. Jiwoo offered another piece. The honey badger accepted. They sat together like that for several minutes, the small girl and the small animal, sharing food in the quiet garden. Then something strange happened. The honey badger climbed onto the bench and curled up next to Jiwoo. It rested its head on her leg. Jiwoo felt warm. Not hot, but warm inside her chest, like drinking soup on a cold day. The honey badger's eyes began to glow very faintly. a soft golden light. Jiwoo's hand resting on the creature's head also glowed. Neither of them moved. They just sat there, connected by something neither of them understood. That's how Hana found them an hour later. She had been searching frantically after security alerted her that the honey badger was loose. She expected to find chaos. Instead, she found her daughter sleeping peacefully on a bench with the supposedly vicious predator curled protectively in her arms. Hana called for security, but she told them to put their weapons down. She could see what had happened. Every xenobiologist in the galaxy knew the signs: the faint glow, the peaceful rest, the protective posture. This was a bond, a real Vradix bond, but it should have been impossible. Bonds required ceremonies. They required years of training. They required creatures specially bred for bonding. Wild animals didn't just choose someone, especially not Earth animals, especially not honey badgers, which were known for being solitary and aggressive. But here it was, undeniable, unprecedented, impossible. By morning, everyone on Nexus Station knew about it. The news spread through the diplomatic quarters, through the training grounds, through the commercial districts. A human child had bonded with an Earth creature. Commander Gorthak heard about it and laughed until his sides hurt. A tiny badger. That was humanity's great warrior companion. This made his challenge even more perfect. Other species reacted differently. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. A few of the older races, the ones who remembered the ancient histories, looked thoughtful and said nothing. Jiwoo woke up in her own bed. Her mother must have carried her home. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. Then she heard a scratching sound. The honey badger was in her room, digging at the carpet near her closet. It had followed her home. Or maybe it had always known where she lived. She sat up and said hello. The honey badger stopped digging and looked at her. Then it walked over and climbed onto her bed. Jiwoo stroked its fur. She could still feel that warmth in her chest. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain. This creature was hers and she was its. They belonged together now. She decided to name him Dubu. It meant tofu in Korean. Her mother had always said Jiwoo had a funny sense of humor. Naming one of Earth's fiercest creatures after a soft food seemed perfect. At breakfast, Tae-sung sat with his family and looked at the honey badger eating fruit from a bowl on the floor. He had spent all night thinking about the proving ceremony. He had been ready to decline the challenge and accept the shame. But now things had changed. Now humanity had a bonded pair, his daughter and her wild companion. Tae-sung knew what he had to do. He sent a message to Commander Gorthak. Ambassador Tae-sung accepted the challenge. Humanity would participate in the proving ceremony. They would send their warrior and their companion. They would stand before the galaxy and prove their worth. When Gorthak received the message, he laughed again. Then he shared the news with everyone in the arena. A human child and a tiny badger would face the galaxy's greatest warriors. This would be the most entertaining ceremony in decades. Everyone wanted to watch. Betting pools opened across the station. The odds of the humans succeeding were 1,000 to 1. Jiwoo didn't know about the odds. She didn't know about the betting or the laughter or the way other species were mocking her. She was sitting in the garden dome again, with Dubu curled in her lap. She was happy. She had always wanted a companion like the ones she saw in the arena. Now she had one. She didn't care that Dubu was small. She didn't care that he wasn't bred in some fancy program. He had chosen her. That was all that mattered. The ceremony was 1 month away. The whole galaxy would be watching. And neither Jiwoo nor Dubu had any idea what they were getting into. The training grounds opened to Jiwoo and Dubu on a cold morning. Other warriors and their Vradix were already there, practicing combat moves and running through obstacle courses. When Jiwoo walked in holding Dubu's leash, everyone stopped and stared. Then they started laughing. Commander Gorthak stood with his arms crossed, a wide grin on his face. Next to him, his thunder lizard Rokmar snorted steam from its massive nostrils. The creature was bigger than a bus. Dubu weighed about as much as a small child. The comparison was almost cruel. Gorthak pointed to a basic training course. It had small walls to jump over, balance beams to cross, and targets to attack. Young Vradix completed this course in their first year of training. He told Jiwoo to begin whenever she was ready. His voice was mocking and loud enough for everyone to hear. Jiwoo unclipped Dubu's leash and pointed at the first obstacle. Dubu looked at it, looked at her, then walked in the opposite direction. He found a patch of dirt and started digging a hole. The laughter grew louder. Jiwoo's face turned red. She called Dubu's name. He ignored her completely. She tried 3 more times. Each time, Dubu did something different. He wandered off to sniff at other Vradix. He rolled on his back. He scratched at a wall. But he never followed her commands. He never did what the course required. After 20 minutes, Gorthak called an end to the embarrassment. He announced that perhaps humans needed more time to understand proper training. Perhaps several years. Perhaps never. That night, Jiwoo cried in her room. Dubu sat on her bed, watching her with those sharp, intelligent eyes. He didn't seem bothered by the failure. But Jiwoo was. She had 3 weeks until the ceremony. 3 weeks to train a creature who wouldn't listen. 3 weeks to prepare for humiliation in front of the entire galaxy. The next morning, someone knocked on their quarters. It was an old Vosh named Master Kira. The Vosh were big bear-like creatures covered in thick fur. Kira was ancient by any standard. With white fur and deep scars from centuries of battle, she was the most respected trainer on Nexus Station. Kira told them she wanted to help. Hana was suspicious. Why would a legendary trainer help humans when everyone else was mocking them? Kira's answer was simple. She said she saw something in Dubu's eyes that reminded her of the old days, before Vradix were bred in laboratories. She said Dubu wasn't stupid or disobedient. He was wild. And wild creatures needed to be understood, not commanded. Jiwoo wanted to believe her. They agreed to meet at a private training area the next day. At school that day, Jiwoo met another human teenager named Dae-jung. He was 15 and had arrived on the station recently. He was excited about the ceremony and told Jiwoo she was brave. Most people just felt sorry for her, but Dae-jung was different. He said he had been reading about Vradix bonds in the old archives. He said something interesting. The oldest records showed that the first bonds were all with wild creatures, not bred ones. Meanwhile, videos of Jiwoo's training failure were spreading across the galactic network. Comedians made jokes. News channels showed Dubu digging holes while serious commentators shook their heads. One popular clip showed Dubu ignoring commands with the caption, "Earth's Mighty Warrior." Taesung watched the videos in his office and felt sick. This was affecting Earth's reputation. Some council members were suggesting that humans withdraw from the ceremony to save face, but Taesung refused. His daughter had bonded with Dubu. That bond was real even if no one else understood it. They would see this through. The private training session with Master Kira was different from the first day. Kira didn't bring obstacle courses or targets. Instead, she brought information. She sat with Jiwoo and Hana and talked about honey badgers. She had researched everything about them. Honey badgers, Kira explained, were one of the most fearless creatures on Earth. They fought snakes, lions, even animals 10 times their size. They had incredibly thick skin that was hard to bite through. They could take damage that would kill most creatures and keep fighting. They were immune to many venoms. They were smart problem solvers. And most importantly, they never backed down from anything. Kira said that Dubu wasn't ignoring commands because he was stupid. He was assessing situations and making his own decisions. Modern Vradix were trained to obey without thinking. But wild warriors like Dubu thought for themselves. That was actually better in real combat. Predictable fighters could be defeated easily. Unpredictable ones were dangerous. She told Jiwoo to stop trying to command Dubu. Instead, she should work with him. Understand him. Trust him to make his own choices. Over the next week, the training changed completely. Instead of obstacle courses, Kira set up combat scenarios. She brought in training drones that attacked. She created situations where Jiwoo and Dubu had to survive together. The first time a drone attacked, Jiwoo panicked. But Dubu didn't. He moved with incredible speed, dodging the drone's strikes and climbing onto it. Within seconds, he had torn open the drone's armor and disabled it. Jiwoo just stood there amazed. Kira smiled. That was Dubu's true nature. He was a fighter, not a performer. Not a show animal. A real deadly fighter they trained in secret. Kira didn't want others to see what Dubu could do. Let them think the honey badger was harmless. Let them underestimate Earth's warrior. The surprise would be better. Daejung visited often, bringing news and information. He had found something important in the archives. The proving ceremony had ancient rules that most people had forgotten. Participants could choose between two types of trials. The modern version was just a demonstration of skills and obedience. But the old version, called the Trial of the Ancients, was a real survival test. It hadn't been used in over 1,000 years, but it was still legal. In the Trial of the Ancients, bonded pairs entered a dangerous environment filled with obstacles and threats. They had to survive and collect 3 medallions hidden throughout the area. Combat between pairs was expected. It wasn't about following commands. It was about staying alive. Master Kira confirmed this was true. She said the Trial of the Ancients was designed for wild bonds, not bred Vrotics. It tested real survival instincts. That was why it had been abandoned. Modern warriors and their obedient Vratics weren't suited for it. They had become too comfortable with safe demonstrations. Jiwoo talked with her parents that evening. If they chose the Trial of the Ancients, it would be dangerous. Really dangerous. People could get hurt. Creatures could die. But it was also Dubu's best chance. In a demonstration, he would fail. In a survival test, he would thrive. Taesung struggled with the decision. His 8-year-old daughter wanted to enter a deadly trial. Every instinct told him to say no. But Hana reminded him that Jiwoo wasn't alone. She had Dubu, and that bond was real. The honey badger would protect her with his life. Finally, with 1 week until the ceremony, Taesung made his decision. He sent an official message to the council. Humanity would participate in the proving ceremony, but they invoked the ancient right to choose the Trial of the Ancients instead of the modern demonstration. The message caused chaos. Council members argued. Commander Gorthak was furious. He called it a trick, a way for humans to avoid proving themselves properly. But the ancient laws were clear. Any bonded pair could choose the old trial. The council had to allow it. News spread across the galaxy within hours. The humans weren't just participating. They were invoking ancient traditions. Some species were offended. Others were intrigued. The betting odds shifted slightly. Not much, but enough to show that some people were starting to wonder. Maybe there was more to this human child and her strange companion than anyone realized. 7 other bonded pairs announced they would also participate in the Trial of the Ancients. They couldn't let a human child show more courage than proven warriors. Commander Gorthak declared he would personally compete. He would end this embarrassment himself. The arena began preparing for something it hadn't hosted in a millennium. Engineers built environmental domes. Weapon technicians programmed combat drones. Medical teams prepared for casualties. In the private training area, Jiwoo sat with Dubu. She was scared but tried not to show it. Master Kira told her that fear was normal. Even good warriors felt fear. The difference was that they didn't let fear control them. Dubu climbed into Jiwoo's lap and closed his eyes. He looked peaceful, unconcerned. Jiwoo wished she could feel that calm, but then she felt that warmth in her chest again, the bond they shared. Dubu wasn't worried because he had her, and she had him. Whatever happened in the trial, they would face it together. The ceremony was 7 days away. The whole galaxy was watching, and in the shadows, ancient species who remembered the old ways were starting to take notice. Perhaps humanity had brought something new to the galaxy. Or perhaps they had brought something very, very old. The grand arena of Nexus Station was packed. 500,000 beings filled the seats, and billions more watched on screens across the galaxy. The arena had been transformed into something that looked like an ancient battlefield. Huge domes covered the fighting area, creating forests, canyons, and rocky terrain inside. Jiwoo stood in the entrance tunnel with Dubu at her side. She could hear the crowd above, their voices mixing into a sound like ocean waves. Her heart was beating fast. She wore simple armor that her mother had found, meant to protect without weighing her down. Dubu wore nothing. He didn't need protection. His thick skin was armor enough. In the tunnel next to them, a Zephyri warrior named Sulmi checked her equipment. The Zephyri were tall and thin with silver skin. Sulmi's Vrotix was a plasma-winged raptor called Sky Reaver, a beautiful creature with wings that glowed blue. Sulmi glanced at Jiwoo and Dubu. Unlike most warriors, she didn't laugh. She nodded with respect, warrior to warrior. Commander Gorthak was in another tunnel. His thunder lizard Rockmar was so big it barely fit in the space. Gorthak had told everyone who would listen that he would personally remove the human embarrassment from the trial. His pride had been damaged by Jiwoo's choice to use the ancient rules. He intended to restore it. 8 bonded pairs in total would enter the trial. 8 different species, 8 different Vratics, and 1 small honey badger. An ancient being called the Adjudicator stood in the center of the arena. This creature was older than most civilizations, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It spoke in a voice that everyone could hear and understand. The rules were simple: survive in the dome for 1 hour, collect 3 ancient medallions hidden throughout the terrain. Combat between pairs was allowed and expected. The last pair standing would receive the greatest honor, but any pair who collected 3 medallions would pass the trial. Death was possible. Injury was likely. Retreat was permitted but would mean failure. The 8 pairs walked into the arena together. The crowd roared. When Jiwoo and Dubu appeared, the roar changed to laughter and whistles. Next to the massive Vratics, Dubu looked like a pet. Some people in the crowd threw soft cushions, a sign of mockery in galactic culture. Taesung and Hana watched from the diplomatic box, their faces tight with worry. The Adjudicator raised one hand. The dome activated with a flash of light. Suddenly, the flat arena floor became a jungle canyon with cliffs, rivers, and dense vegetation. The temperature jumped. Artificial rain began to fall. Combat drones powered up in hidden locations. The trial began. The large Vratics charged forward immediately, smashing through obstacles. A Kelthran pair went left. A Vosh pair went right. Solmi and Skyreaver took to the air, using their flying advantage to scout the terrain. Gorthok and Rockmar moved straight ahead, crushing everything in their path. Jiwoo looked at Dubu. She didn't give commands. She just waited to see what he would do. Dubu sniffed the air, looked around, then started walking along the canyon wall. Jiwoo followed. Within seconds, Dubu found a crack in the wall and squeezed through. Jiwoo had to crawl to fit, but she managed. They disappeared into a tunnel while the other pairs were still charging around looking for medallions. In the observation boxes, Master Kira smiled. Dubu was using terrain to his advantage, just like she had taught them. The other warriors were fighting. Dubu was thinking. The first medallion was in a clearing surrounded by trees. 2 pairs reached it at the same time. A Kelthran thunder lizard and a Vosh titan bear began fighting over it. The battle was massive. Trees snapped. The ground shook. Both creatures were strong and trained for combat. They fought with power and skill. While they fought, Dubu emerged from a side tunnel that no one else had noticed. He grabbed the medallion in his teeth and vanished back into the tunnel before either warrior realized what happened. Jiwoo ran behind him, laughing despite her fear. They had the first medallion, and they hadn't fought at all. The crowd's laughter began to change to surprised murmurs. On Earth, millions of humans watching the broadcast started to cheer. The dome's automated defenses activated. Combat drones flew out of hidden compartments and began attacking all the pairs. These weren't practice drones. They had real weapons. Plasma bolts filled the air. The large Vratics fought the drones with brute force, destroying them but taking damage. One thunder lizard got hit by 3 plasma bolts and roared in pain. The Titan bear crushed 2 drones but got burned by a third. Jiwoo and Dubu encountered their first drone in a narrow passage. The drone's targeting system locked onto Jiwoo. She froze. The drone prepared to fire. Dubu moved faster than the eye could follow. He jumped at the drone, climbing it like a tree. The drone tried to shake him off, spinning and rising higher. Dubu held on with his powerful claws, biting at the drone's armor. Within seconds, he found a weak spot and tore through to the wiring inside. The drone sparked and crashed. Jiwoo just stared. She had known Dubu was tough, but seeing him destroy a military drone was different. This wasn't a cute Earth animal. This was a predator. They found the second medallion in a cave behind a waterfall. 3 drones guarded it. Dubu destroyed all 3 while Jiwoo stayed hidden behind rocks. When the last drone fell, she ran forward and grabbed the medallion. 2 down, 1 to go. Sulmi had been watching from above. Skyreaver's good eyes had tracked the human pair through much of the trial. Sulmi was impressed. This child and her small companion were doing better than warriors with years of training. But Sulmi was also competitive. She had a reputation to maintain. She landed in front of Jiwoo as the girl emerged from the cave. Sulmi held up one hand in the traditional challenge gesture. She wanted a fair fight, warrior to warrior, Vratics to Vratics. If Jiwoo surrendered the medallion, Sulmi would let them go unharmed. If not, they would battle. Jiwoo looked at Dubu. The honey badger was staring at Skyreaver. The raptor was 5 times his size with plasma-edged wings that could cut through metal. Any sane creature would back down. Dubu moved forward, positioning himself between Jiwoo and the threat. His message was clear. He accepted the challenge. Sulmi nodded with respect. Then she commanded Skyreaver to attack, but not to kill. This was meant to be a teaching moment, showing the human child what real training looked like. Skyreaver struck from the air, diving with talons extended. The attack should have ended it quickly, but Dubu didn't dodge. He charged forward, getting under the raptor's guard. When Skyreaver's talons closed around him, Dubu's loose skin saved him. The talons couldn't get a solid grip. Dubu twisted in the raptor's grasp and bit down on its leg. Skyreaver shrieked and tried to fly away, but Dubu held on with jaws like a steel trap. The raptor thrashed and spun in the air. They crashed to the ground together. Dubu didn't let go. He never let go. Sulmi realized with shock that this wasn't a normal fight. Dubu wasn't trying to win points or demonstrate skill. He was fighting to hurt, to damage, to never stop until the threat was gone. Blood flowed from both creatures now. Skyreaver's leg was badly wounded. Dubu had cuts from the plasma-edged wings. But the honey badger's eyes showed no pain, no fear, only focus. Sulmi called off her Vratics before serious damage occurred. She stepped back and gestured surrender. She had never seen anything like this. Bred Vratics were trained to stop when commanded. This wild creature would fight until death, his or the enemy's. There was no middle ground. Jiwoo ran to Dubu. He was bleeding but walking. She checked his wounds while Sulmi tended to Skyreaver. The two warriors locked eyes. Sulmi spoke quietly. She said Jiwoo had a true warrior companion. Then she pointed toward the eastern canyon. She had seen the third medallion location from the air. She was giving Jiwoo the information freely. Jiwoo thanked her and moved quickly. 30 minutes remained. Other pairs had also collected medallions, but one pair was dominating the trial. Commander Gorthak and Rockmar had 2 medallions and had defeated every pair they encountered. Now they were looking for the human child. Gorthak had been humiliated by this entire situation. A child, a tiny earth creature, ancient rules being invoked. His reputation damaged. He had decided that accidents happened in trials. If the human pair didn't survive, that was unfortunate, but within the rules. The trial allowed combat. Combat sometimes led to death. He spotted Jiwoo moving toward the eastern canyon and smiled. Finally, he would end this embarrassment. Jiwoo saw Rockmar's massive form blocking her path. The thunder lizard was 3 tons of muscle, scales, and teeth. Gorthak sat on his back looking down at her. He announced loudly that the trial was too dangerous for children. He suggested Jiwoo surrender now and withdraw safely. In the observation box, Taesung stood up, ready to demand they stop the trial. But Hana held his arm. Their daughter had to make this choice. Jiwoo looked at Gorthak. Then she spoke clearly, her voice amplified by the arena systems. She said that Dubu chose her. That was more honor than any bred creature knew. They would collect the 3rd medallion, and if Gorthak wanted to stop them, that was his choice to make. The arena fell silent. An 8-year-old human had just challenged the greatest warrior on Nexus Station. Gorthak's face went dark with rage. No one spoke to him that way. No one challenged him. He commanded Rockmar to attack. The massive thunder lizard charged forward, the ground shaking with each step. Rockmar charged like an avalanche. Each step made the ground shake. The thunder lizard's mouth opened, showing teeth the size of knives. This was a creature bred for war over centuries, trained since birth. 3 tons of controlled destruction. Dubu weighed 30 pounds. He had no training, no breeding program, no centuries of careful genetic selection. He was just a wild animal from Earth who happened to bond with a human child. Combat analysts watching from across the galaxy calculated his chances 0. Impossible. This would be over in seconds. But they didn't understand honey badgers. They didn't know about the creatures from Earth that fought snakes and lions. They didn't know about animals that took stings from hundreds of bees and kept walking. They didn't know about a species that simply refused to understand the word quit. Dubu didn't run. He advanced to meet the charge. His small body moved with pure focus. No fear, no hesitation, just instinct and rage. Rockmar's first attack should have ended everything. A massive claw came down like a hammer, but Dubu was already moving, diving under the strike. His loose skin made him hard to grab. His small size made him hard to hit. He went for Rockmar's leg, climbing with terrifying speed. Gorthak commanded his Vratics to shake him off. Rukmar thrashed violently, smashing against rocks and trees. The honey badger held on with claws that could dig through concrete. He climbed higher, working toward the thunder lizard's throat. Blood began to flow. Dubu's claws tore through scales. His teeth found flesh, but he was taking damage too. Rukmar's thrashing had broken some of his ribs. One of his legs was bleeding badly. A normal creature would stop. Pain would make them retreat. Dubu didn't stop. His species had evolved to take incredible damage and keep fighting. Pain was just information. It didn't control him. In the observation boxes, people were standing up. This wasn't supposed to happen. The small creature should be dead. Instead, the legendary thunder lizard was bleeding and roaring in pain. Sulmi watched with wide eyes, understanding now why her own Vratics had struggled. This wasn't about size or training. This was about spirit. Master Kira stood with tears in her eyes. This was what she remembered from the ancient days. Real wild warriors who fought with pure heart. The galaxy had forgotten what that looked like. Rukmar finally threw Dubu off through pure force. The honey badger flew through the air and crashed into a pile of rocks. He should have stayed down. Bones were broken. Blood covered his fur. A normal creature would be unconscious. Dubu got up. He stood on shaking legs, breathing hard, and stared at Rukmar with those sharp, intelligent eyes. He wasn't done. He would never be done until the threat was gone or he was dead. Gorthak felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Not for himself, for his Vratics, for his companion of many years. Rukmar was hurt. Really hurt. The thunder lizard's neck was torn. Blood dripped from multiple wounds. And that small earth creature was still ready to fight. Gorthak made a decision he would later regret. He drew his personal weapon, a plasma blade kept for emergencies. If his Vratics couldn't defeat this creature, he would do it himself. He aimed at Dubu. The adjudicator's voice boomed across the arena. A warrior had interfered in a Vratics combat. This was forbidden by the ancient rules. The fight was now between bonded pairs, human against Kelthran, not just Vratics against Vratics. Jiwu had been frozen with fear, watching Dubu fight. But when Gorthak drew his weapon, something changed in her. This warrior was threatening her companion, her friend, her family. She picked up a rock and threw it as hard as she could. The rock hit Gorthak's arm. It didn't hurt him, but it made his aim waver. The plasma blade fired wide, hitting nothing. Gorthak turned to look at the human child, shocked that she had attacked him directly. That moment of distraction was enough. Rukmar, already wounded and frightened, wasn't watching Dubu. The honey badger charged again, faster this time, fueled by protective rage. If the big warrior threatened Jiwu, Dubu would end him. He went for Rukmar's eyes. The thunder lizard screamed and thrashed, but Dubu was already there, claws and teeth finding vulnerable spots. Rukmar had never felt pain like this, never faced a creature that refused to stop no matter what. Gorthak screamed for his Vratics to retreat, but Rukmar was panicking now, blinded by blood and pain. The massive creature crashed into support pillars, destroying parts of the arena dome. Automated systems began emergency shutdown procedures. Then something unprecedented happened, something that shocked every warrior in the galaxy. Rukmar, the legendary thunder lizard, champion of 100 battles, backed away. He submitted. He retreated from a creature 50 times smaller. The arena fell completely silent. This was impossible. Vratics were bred to be fearless. They never backed down, never surrendered. But Rukmar had met something more fearless. Something that truly didn't understand fear at all. Dubu stood in the center of the clearing, breathing hard, blood dripping from dozens of wounds. He watched Rukmar retreat with those cold predator eyes. Only when the threat was gone did he relax slightly. He turned and limped back toward Jiwu. Jiwu was crying. She ran to Dubu and dropped to her knees beside him. He was hurt badly, but he pressed his head against her chest and made a soft sound, reassuring her that he was okay. They had protected each other. They had survived. In the chaos of Rukmar's rampage, the third medallion had been exposed. It lay on the ground just meters away, knocked loose from its hiding place. Jiwu saw it and understood. She ran for it while Dubu stood guard, ready to fight anyone who tried to stop her. No one tried to stop her. Every warrior in the dome was watching in stunned silence. Jiwu grabbed the medallion just as the trial timer reached 0. The dome's defenses deactivated, The trial was over. Jiwoo held up all 3 medallions. She was the first human to complete the trial of the ancients. But more importantly, Dubu stood victorious over the galaxy's most decorated Vratiks. The impossible had happened. The arena stayed silent for several long seconds. Then Sulmi began pounding her fist against her chest in the traditional warrior salute. The sound echoed through the space. One by one, other warriors joined. Even some who had mocked humans before. Even some who had laughed at Dubu. They recognized what they had witnessed. Not a demonstration. Not a performance. A real battle between true warriors. And the smallest warrior had proven the strongest. Taesung and Hana ran down from the observation boxes. Medical teams rushed into the dome. Jiwoo collapsed from exhaustion, still clutching the medallions. Dubu limped to her side and curled around her protectively, even though he could barely move. The medics tried to separate them to treat their wounds, but Dubu growled at anyone who came too close. Finally, Hana convinced the medical team to treat them together. As long as Jiwoo was within his sight, Dubu allowed the treatment. Commander Gorthak stood over his wounded Vratiks, his face a mixture of shame and disbelief. Rockmar was alive but hurt badly. The thunder lizard kept making sounds of fear, something it had never done before. The creature had been broken mentally, not just physically. Gorthak had spent years claiming that proper breeding and training made the perfect warrior. Now a wild animal with no training had defeated his perfect creation. Everything he believed had been challenged. The holofeed recordings were already spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. Every news network was showing the battle. Every species was discussing what it meant. On Earth, the celebrations were massive. Humans had proven themselves. Not through technology or numbers, but through the bond between a child and a fierce little creature who refused to quit. In the council chambers, leaders of ancient races were having emergency meetings. If one Earth creature could do this, what about the others? Humans had mentioned things called wolves, bears, eagles, tigers. What would happen when humanity truly understood the gift their world had given them? The Vratiks breeding corporations saw their stock values drop. If natural bonds could form this quickly and this strongly, their monopoly was threatened. They began planning how to respond to this new reality. But all of that was politics and business. In the medical bay, Jiwoo lay on a bed next to Dubu. Both were bandaged and sleeping. The honey badger's paw was resting on Jiwoo's hand. Even in sleep, they stayed connected. Master Kira watched them from the doorway. She had trained warriors for centuries. She had seen the greatest fighters from dozens of species, but she had never seen anything like this. True bonds, wild hearts, the kind of connection that the modern galaxy had forgotten was possible. Daejong stood next to her taking notes. He was already writing the story of what happened today. Future generations needed to know. This was the day everything changed. Sulmi visited briefly, bringing traditional warrior gifts. She placed them near Jiwoo's bed and left without waking her. The Zephyri warrior had found something she hadn't expected: respect for humans, and a desire to learn more about these Earth creatures who bonded so naturally. As night fell on Nexus Station, Jiwoo woke up briefly. She felt Dubu next to her and relaxed. Everything hurt, but they had done it. They had proven that humans deserved to stand with the other warrior races, not because humans were stronger or tougher, but because they could form real bonds with creatures who chose them freely. 2 months passed. Nexus Station had changed. Human visitors were no longer dismissed or mocked. Aliens asked questions about Earth animals with genuine curiosity. Children from different species wanted to meet Dubu. The honey badger had become famous across the galaxy, though he seemed completely unaware of his celebrity status. He still spent most of his time digging holes and eating fruit. Jiwoo had recovered from her injuries. So had Dubu, though he walked with a slight limp now. The medical team said it would heal completely, but it would take time. Dubu didn't seem to mind. He still followed Jiwoo everywhere, still curled up next to her at night, still made that soft sound when she scratched behind his ears. Ambassador Taesung stood before the Galactic Council with a formal announcement. Earth was establishing the Companion Initiative, a program to study natural bonds between humans and animals. Dr. Hana would lead the research. They weren't trying to compete with the Vratiks breeding programs. They were offering something different, a chance to rediscover what wild bonds could be. The council listened with respect. Several species requested to send observers to Earth. They wanted to see this world that produced such fearless creatures. Sulmi was the first to volunteer. She had become Jiwoo's friend and wanted to understand more about human-animal bonds. But not everyone was happy about these changes. The Vrodix breeding corporations had lost billions in value. Their 1,000-year monopoly was threatened. They had allies in the council who argued that allowing wild bonds was dangerous. What if these Earth creatures became aggressive? What if bonds formed with the wrong people? The system had worked for millennia. Why change it? Commander Gorthak became a voice for these traditionalists. His pride had been damaged by the trial. Rockmar had never fully recovered. The Thunder Lizard was still strong, still healthy, but something had changed. He hesitated now. He showed fear. Gorthak blamed the wild creature from Earth for breaking his perfect companion. He spoke at council meetings about the dangers of wild bonds. He gathered supporters who wanted to limit human involvement in the warrior culture. He pushed for rules that would prevent Earth animals from participating in official ceremonies. Master Kira spoke against him. She was old and respected, and people listened when she talked. She explained the truth that the corporations didn't want known. The Vrodix breeding programs had started centuries ago because wild bonds were becoming rare. Not because breeding was better, but because wild creatures were disappearing. Corporations had rewritten history to make their version seem superior. True wild bonds, she said, were once common. But most species had hunted their wild creatures to extinction, or domesticated them completely. Earth was special because humans had preserved their wild animals while also forming relationships with some. They understood balance in a way the galaxy had forgotten. The council debated for weeks. Meanwhile, more humans arrived at Nexus Station. Daejung had helped coordinate a program bringing young humans who showed potential for bonding. 4 of them had succeeded. Bora bonded with a crow she named Shadow. Taemin bonded with a cobra called Scales. Subin bonded with a wolverine named Storm. And Jaehwan bonded with an octopus in a special water suit called 8. Each bond was different. The crow was intelligent and could scout from the air. The cobra was fast and venomous. The wolverine was fierce like Dubu but slightly bigger. The octopus was bizarre to most aliens but incredibly clever with its 8 arms. Together with Jiwoo and Dubu, they represented Earth's diversity. When traditionalists demanded another trial to prove these bonds were real, the 5 humans accepted. This trial would be different. A team event. 5 human pairs against 5 elite warrior pairs from species that had never lost a team trial. The stakes were clear. If humans lost, they would stop the companion initiative. If they won, Earth would receive a permanent council seat. The trial was set as a coordinated assault scenario. Teams had to work together, using strategy and cooperation. The opposing team was professional, synchronized, and powerful. They had trained together for years. The human team had trained for only 3 weeks. But they had something the professionals didn't understand. Earth creatures had evolved together in complex ecosystems. They knew how to cooperate and adapt without formal training. When the trial began, Shadow the Crow flew high, scouting and communicating. Scales the Cobra moved through tight spaces using venom to disable threats. Storm the Wolverine fought with rage similar to Dubu's. 8 the Octopus manipulated objects and created camouflage. And Dubu led them forward, fearless as always. The human team didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like nature, adaptive, creative, unpredictable. The professional team struggled to counter strategies that had no pattern, no traditional structure. Then something unexpected happened. Sulmi, who was watching from the stands, interfered. She blocked an illegal strike from one of the opposing warriors. She had seen the attack coming and couldn't let it happen. She believed in fair combat. Other young warriors joined her. They had been inspired by Jiwoo's victory and wanted to see the old system change. A brawl nearly started in the observation area between traditionalists and progressives. The adjudicator called a halt to the trial, declaring it compromised, but the point had been made. The younger generation was ready for change. They had seen what natural bonds could accomplish. They wanted the freedom to choose their companions, not have them assigned by breeding programs. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The debate lasted 3 days. Finally, they voted. The decision was close, but it passed. The companion bond system would be reformed. Natural bonds would be allowed alongside bred Vratics. Earth would receive a permanent council seat in recognition of their contribution to restoring ancient practices. Commander Gorthak sat in his quarters that night, staring at Rockmar. His companion was eating, but without enthusiasm. The thunder lizard that had once been fearless now jumped at loud noises. Gorthak realized his entire understanding of bonds had been wrong. He had thought control and obedience made a perfect companion. But true bonds were built on mutual respect and trust. The next day, Gorthak did something that shocked everyone. He requested a private meeting with Jiwoo. He came to her quarters and stood before the 8-year-old child. He admitted his defeat, not just in the trial, but in understanding. His Vrotics had never truly been fearless. It had been conditioned to hide fear. Dubu, who knew no fear at all, had revealed what Rockmar was suppressing. Gorthak asked Jiwoo to teach him, not about winning or fighting, but about real bonding. Jiwoo agreed, but she had one condition. He had to apologize to Dubu. The proud warrior knelt before the honey badger and bowed his head. He spoke words of respect and regret. Dubu, in typical fashion, completely ignored him. He was busy digging a hole in the corner of the room. Jiwoo laughed. She told Gorthak that Dubu had already forgiven him. That was just what honey badgers did. They didn't hold grudges. They lived in the moment. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. Young warriors from various species visited Earth, forming bonds with animals there. Dogs became popular companions for their loyalty. Horses were chosen by those who loved running. Birds of prey partnered with flyers. Even some aquatic species formed bonds with dolphins. The Vrotics breeding programs still existed, but now they had competition. Natural bond initiatives opened across the galaxy. Some old corporations adapted, helping to find compatible wild creatures for different species. Others refused to change and slowly faded. Earth shared its animals carefully. Dr. Hana made sure that creatures were treated with respect, that bonds were genuine, and that no species was harmed by overharvesting. Humans had learned from their own history. They wouldn't let their companions become endangered. 5 years passed. Jiwoo was 13 now. Dubu was older and slower. His fur had more gray. His limp was more pronounced. But his eyes were still sharp, still intelligent. And when threats appeared, that fearless spirit remained unchanged. Jiwoo had become a teacher, training new bonded pairs. She taught both humans and aliens about forming real connections with companions. Sulmi worked with her, having formed a second bond with an Earth falcon. They were best friends now, bridging their two species. Commander Gorthak had changed too. He still trained warriors, but his methods were different. He taught respect and understanding instead of just obedience and control. Rockmar had regained some confidence, though he would never be the same as before. Sometimes that was okay. Growing and changing was part of life. The galaxy's archives had been updated. The truth about wild bonds and the corporate manipulation of history was now public knowledge. Students learned that the strongest bonds weren't bred or trained. They were chosen freely by both parties. One evening, Jiwoo sat in the garden dome where she had first met Dubu. The honey badger was curled in her lap, sleeping peacefully. Other children played nearby with their various companions. Human children, alien children, all mixed together. A young alien child approached and asked Jiwoo why she had chosen such a small companion. All the old warriors had huge Vrotics. Why pick something tiny? Jiwoo smiled and scratched behind Dubu's ears. She explained that she hadn't chosen him. He had chosen her. That was the difference between old bonds and new bonds.